I don't know how I get myself into these things. I just seem to talk and then people want to hear more and I don't know. Sorry. Okay, so before I begin, I just want to warn you. I am going to take you on a journey, and it's a journey of laughter and tears. And I have brought my tissue, so I think I'm going to be okay. Do you want to start? My darling Regina, please know that you are loved and desired and will always have a special place in my heart. You were named after your granddad Reginald, who would have been so proud of you, just as we, your parents, would have been. I dreamed of you so many times, crawling into your dad's lap while he was studying, and you lying on his chest as you both slept on a hot summer's day. You were part of my thoughts for so long that it broke my heart to know that you would never be, that I'd never get to know you, or see who you'd become. I wish I could have known you with your dad and seen you share your granddad's memories. I wish I could have seen your smile and heard you laugh. I wish I could have held you in my arms when you cried. I wish so much for you. You will always be in my thoughts. I am one of 315,000 estimated women between the ages of 45 to 49 in the UK who is childless by circumstance. That's 1 in 5 women. For many women, the reality of living without children is one that we never expected to face. My name is Yvonne John, and this is my story. I suppose like many young girls through their teens and their 20s, you had hopes and dreams. No different from any other young girl, I'm one of 3 children, the only girl. And I remember when I wanted to go to university, I couldn't wait to get out of the house. Sorry, my parents are here today, so I'm sure they're going to hear some things they're going to cringe at. But I had arguments with my parents. We fought, we had disagreements, and I just couldn't wait to get away. So I ran off to university, and I had a really great time at uni. But one of the things I found difficult through my 20s was dating. I never knew who I was, so I found that experience extremely difficult and extremely confusing. And I found myself going from relationship to relationship, not knowing who I was, and always wanting to change who I was for that person, thinking that actually this one's going to stay this time if I'm this person, this one will stay this time if I'm that person. So I just became this very confused young woman, didn't know who I was, and slowly became very insecure with who I was. By the time I hit my late 20s, I had 2 terminations and I had very, very low self-esteem. I hit rock bottom. I remember I just walked down the street with looking at the ground. I couldn't hold my head up. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I started to hate who I was. And I felt very desperate to want to be something different. And I think my mantra at that time was, if only you knew who I was. With this low self-esteem and this desperation to be liked, to be loved, to be known, I went to church. Religion gave me this promise of forgiveness. So I absorbed myself in that environment and I started a new chapter in my life. As I went through this environment, I was there for about 10 years. I was singing in the choir. I was a very active member of the church. But I started to realise that actually I still don't know who I am. And I went through that whole experience with people constantly telling me I wasn't good enough. For whatever reason. The words weren't exactly you're not good enough, but everything they were telling me, everything they were telling me I couldn't do, they were always shutting me down. If I had questions, they would just, want to push me aside. I just came away feeling like I really am not good enough, and I just do not know who I am. So I left the church in my mid-30s, and I went on a journey of self-discovery. I really needed to know who I was. I came out of there, I felt very depressed when I left because of not knowing who I was, and because I was bombarded with a lot of messages, I didn't know really what to do with them. So I found it very difficult leaving, and I found it very difficult then moving forward and trying to figure out who I was. So I went on this journey, I read books, I made new friends, I got around different people. And at some point, around 37, I really started to like who I was. I really started to understand who I was. And for the first time, I actually could start looking at myself in the mirror and thought, you know what, you're okay. At 37, I think as well, I had, around that time, when I was then thinking, look, I'm not far from 40, what am I really going to do with my life? I had given up on the desire to have children and get married. No one thought I was going to get married, actually. I was a lost cause for a lot of people. But it was something that I did think would happen anyway, because I was, a lot older. Because of my terminations, you know what, my choices, I've made my choices, I think I've given up on that chance. So I never thought I'd ever be able to have children, would go on to have children anyway, because I just didn't think that would happen. I wasn't a very maternal person anyway. I wasn't this woman that was, I've got to have children no matter what. But it was one of those dreams, one of those fleeting dreams that you have as a child, and it's one of those things that stayed in the back of my mind. But as I said, I figured that boat had already sailed. So, I thought, you know what, just move on and find a new dream in your life. So at 37, 38, I met this really nice guy. You might need to turn down the light so everyone can see it. I don't want you to miss this picture. I met who then became my husband, David. He was a very important person in my life, and he was someone who was a very important turning point in my life. When we met, I remember the day we met because I was photographing a function, and he was quite cheeky, and he came up to me and he was, have you got a business card? Looking like he wanted to hire me for something, but he just wanted my number. We became friends for the next 5 months, and he was the first guy I ever dated that I was friends with first. And he took the time to know me, and he showed me this love and compassion that I had never seen with anyone before, and it just really touched my heart. So when he proposed, it was an easy yes. In fact, I think it took me the next 6 months to realise actually he had proposed, and he wanted to marry me, and he was going to plan to stick around for as long as he could. But it was an interesting journey, and a lot of tears for me, because there was a lot of things that I hadn't forgiven myself for, so I found it difficult to be loved by him anyway. But at 39, when was it? I think I was 39, got married, we went off to Jamaica, it was absolutely fantastic. And then we entered our married life. And it was wonderful. My first year, I absolutely loved it. I still have a lot of laughs with him. But I suppose when we met, and before we got married, we decided we weren't going to have kids. We weren't really bothered about it. And because I'd already thought, you know what, it's not going to happen anyway, it wasn't something that I was bringing into that relationship. So we thought our lives are just going to be the two of us. About a year into our marriage, I decided, actually, I'm kind of liking this. And I think it'd be nice to add someone to our family. So we decided let's see how it goes. And again, I was still thinking, well, this probably might not happen. I'm 39, I was 40 at the time. And it probably wouldn't have happened, but I really needed to try. I didn't want to get to menopause and think I hadn't given this a go. But we were quite easy with it, it's going to be fine, let's just see what's going to happen. And for the next 3 years, we went on a very emotional journey of trying to conceive. You think it's going to be easy, and it's supposed to be easy. You have sex, you get pregnant, you have a baby, yay. But it just didn't happen. We tried and we tried and we tried, and And it became very difficult for us because we started to argue about it. It wasn't fun anymore. It was this calculated liaisons. I'm ovulating, let's go. You know, and if I was strong enough, I would have flung him down on the bed and just got on with it. And you know, it was hard because I thought, and I think, you know, all men want to have sex any time of the day, and it's not true. Well, it is sometimes, but you know, I think when it wasn't fun anymore, it wasn't romantic, when it just became, we've got to do this to produce something, it just wasn't fun, and it took us on a very difficult emotional journey. And it was quite upsetting because, as I said, we used to argue a lot about it, and you know, it was just very difficult to recover from. During this time, you know, given that nothing was happening, I decided to go for fertility testing. So we had about a year's worth of testing, which is not a pleasant experience by any means. Again, another emotional journey. You're on a search for answers, but you're just going from one test to another to another. And there's months in between. You see a consultant, and they say, oh, let's do another test. You know, and you're just never getting any answers, and it's just very tiring. And you're just never, you know, I just felt like, when is this going to end? When is somebody going to give me an answer? And at 43, I had my final appointment with a consultant. And I remember sitting in his office, and he just looked at me and said, okay, well, we don't know why you can't get pregnant. You have what we call unexplained infertility. And I just sat there and thought, what the hell are you talking about? And that was about it. That's all I got told. You've got unexplained infertility, but just keep trying. It might still happen. And that was it. Pat on the back, there you go. And I walked out of that office. I went home. I lay on my bed and I just cried. I just did not understand what this meant for me. I then entered my next stage, my grief. At the beginning of this, I did not know what it was. I remember I used to think, you know, I have friends with young children. I have nieces, I have nephews. There's kids all around me. But I started not to be able to be around them. I would find that I'd be in a room with my friends and I would just feel like I have to run out. I have to get out of this room because I'm going to cry. I'd be on a train, families will get on, and I would just need to get off at the next stop because I couldn't be around that anymore. I remember a friend telling me it took her 7 months to conceive her second child, and I sat there and I thought, really? 7 months? Why didn't you try 3 years? And you still have a child, you know? It was really hard to contain these emotions. But what was difficult was I didn't even understand what was happening to me. It just didn't make sense why I was so upset by these normal occurrences that were going on. I was very lucky because I had a friend who's an older friend who had been through it all before, and she just said to me, well, you're grieving. And I didn't, what are you talking about? She said, well, you're grieving the loss of your unborn children. And that, again, made no sense to me. How can you grieve something you've never had? So with trying to understand this and work my way through it, I came across a lady called Jodie Day, who's founder of Gateway Women. And Gateway Women is an organisation it's an organisation and a friendship and a support group for women living without children by circumstance. And it pretty much saved my sanity. Being around women and who have similar stories and who understand and who get why you just cry for no reason was such a lifesaver for me. You know, I know people don't want to see you upset and people try and encourage you, you know, keep trying, don't give up hope, but it doesn't help because you really want someone to understand why you're just crying for no reason. You want someone to hold your hand and say, you know what, I really understand, and it's crap. Jodie, in her book, she's got a book called Living the Life Unexpected that's out now. And in her book, she mentioned, for those of us who have gone on to remain childless after having an abortion, there can be a dark shadow that hangs over us, which says that somehow we're not allowed to grieve our childlessness because we've had the opportunity to be a mother and we didn't go through with it. It's another way of adding to the experience of disenfranchised grief and a secret even childless women rarely share with each other. You know, it really is a secret that you hold in your heart. You know, I always thought that I had forgiven myself for it, but I realised actually going through this grief and being here that I hadn't. Even meeting other childless women, I'll have conversations with them, and if I'm brave enough to tell them, you know what, well, I've had an abortion in my 20s, and they turn around and go, oh my God, so have I. And that relief, that sense of freedom that we instantly have in that moment really does help us to be able to know that actually it's okay for us to be here. So I joined the Plan B membership program in March 2015. Now, I got my diagnosis in October 2014, so as I said, I was quite fortunate to find this group very early on in my journey. So during that time, so the Plan B membership program is basically, as it says, it's about finding a Plan B. So it's we're looking for finding a fulfilling life without children. And it's one of those things, because if as I said, I was never that person who was, gung-ho about having children. But for people who really want to have children and then you find out you never can, it really is, well, what next? What does this mean? And for women who are supposed to be able to reproduce at the drop of a hat, when you can't do that, what place do we have in society? A lot of people really disregard us and think we don't have a place and that, we're nobody, we don't have a voice. I know one of the issues I had was feeling like I wasn't heard. So during at the start of my Plan B program, and working through my grief and my forgiveness, I decided, you know what, I really need to be heard here. And so the idea of my book was born. I think it's since the summer of 2015. I remember sitting in the group and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to write a book. And just popped into my head and everyone was behind me. The support we have for each other and the love is amazing. And it really does help us go from day to day. And there's some days we don't want to get out of bed. Some days we just think, I can't be at work. Some people have to have time off work because their grief is so much that they can't work through it, they just can't function anymore. So, as I said, I just wanted to have a voice, and I wanted my sisters to have a voice as well. So, Dreaming of a Life Unlived was conceived amongst my support group. It's, as it says, it's intimate stories and portraits of women living without children. So it's my story as well as a collection of stories from women who, for different reasons, are all here trying to find a fulfilling life without children. If anybody wants to know more about the book, we're hoping to have it out in April. I'm working with designers at the moment, so it should be ready in April this year. We do have a mailing list, so just come and see us afterwards. My husband's got the mailing list, so put your details down and we'll make sure you get all the information. What I would like to just leave you with is the fact that, I think, we don't need to hear... I think one of the things I found difficult in all of this is people constantly trying to fix me. Have you tried adoption? Have you tried IVF? Have you tried this? Have you tried that? All sorts, have you had this test? Have you had... And it really doesn't help. We're not mindless, crazy people. We do know what is out there. Some people have tried it, and it's a difficult journey in itself. For me, I chose 3 years of this emotional journey. I just couldn't come out of it and just go on and try adopting or try IVF, because actually I needed to understand what I was going through. I needed to heal from that. And being 43 at the time, it just wasn't, I knew it wasn't going to happen, but that was the piece that I needed to make for myself and with my husband. And we didn't want to put plasters on the cracks. We really wanted to work this out. Hearing don't give up hope, keep praying. You just don't know what we've done throughout this whole time. 3 years of hoping was enough, really. And it wasn't about giving up hope anymore. It was just about not being in denial. So, you know what? If you see someone like me, just ask us, how are you doing? What do you need? Or just give us a hug. That's all we need. We just need some understanding. We need that love and we need that support. I know for myself, my grief will always be with me, but my scars are starting to heal as I heal from my past. I used to say I made mistakes, but I have come to understand that they're not mistakes, they were choices. Choices that a lot of people will judge me for, but no more than I would judge myself. If you ever want to know more about it, buy me a drink sometime and I'll tell you about them. Thank you for listening.
Mrs. John, what drink would you love to have?
What can I have? Southern Comfort and lemonade.
Coming up. Coming up.
Just to say she is a brave, courageous, strong woman.